huge parts of my day, I just had no one, no family, no friends, no team to speak to. So at the beginning, I was like, holy shit, I feel very alone.
Don't get disheartened if the first one you go to isn't right, because there's lots of crappy co-working spaces. I'd argue that for individuals, WeWork is crap.
You need to build something. So going from like 0 to 1 is, if you want to create a billion-dollar company, a multi-billion-dollar company, and impact hundreds of millions of people.
If you live in a remote area, not everyone lives in a big city. If you're an e-commerce founder, you can find those. If you're more of like a SaaS founder, it's easy to find that. Ramen Club is a great option for indie hackers and SaaS founders and bootstrappers and that kind of thing, but there are other good ones as well.
We are back with another episode of the Do As I Say, Not As I Did podcast. The name kind of explains the podcast, you know. We're giving you advice based on everything we did wrong the first time. Each week I bring on founders, investors, product experts, technology futurists, sales gurus, just about anyone who is very smart and can help us work out how to build a great business. And then together, we answer the questions about what is going on in your lives and in your businesses. People either send them through or we get them on Reddit, but really we're just getting challenges that the guests have never seen before and getting, you know, their first responses of how would they go about this situation. So if you've got a question that you want to ask or you want us to workshop on the podcast, send them through to podcast@joeldtrapani.com. And I know that is a hard email, and that's okay. It's in the show notes. You can copy and paste it later on. I'm your host, Joel DiTrapani, and I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Vigo, which is an edtech scale-up. We've grown through Australia and the UK, and we are now focused on the US, the promised land. On top of that, I'm an advisor and a coach in the product space where I help startups and businesses work out how to run great product teams, because that is the secret to building great products. And that is something I got wrong for a very long time. And today I'm super excited to be joined by Charlie Ward, an exceptional solopreneur or indie hacker who does an amazing job of building in public and sharing his journey. Charlie is the founder and community lead at Indie London, the UK's #1 indie hackers community, where he brings together people both online and with incredible events. Charlie's also the founder of Ramen Club, a startup that builds community, content, and tools to support bootstrap founders. And he does more. Charlie also runs Studio Ramen, a design studio focused on product development, community, and AI. And even though he should have no time at all, Charlie is very generous with his time and he's constantly helping out founders along their own journey. Charlie is an absolute expert at community building and building profitable businesses from day one. So let's jump into it. Welcome, Charlie. Thank you so much for coming on today, mate.
Thanks, Joel. Great to be here. Thanks for the warm welcome.
Well, man, tell me, what are you working on right now? What is all this time going towards?
So my main gig is Ramen Club, as you were saying. So the focus at the moment is to launch our new roadmap. So we shared a roadmap with our community for input quite recently. And the main pillars are what you touched on, the community insights and tools, or community content and tools. And yeah, I'm just excited to roll a bunch of it out. I think the #1 thing is that we are doing a greater focus on launching our in-person events. So about half our community have an online remote membership, about half come to in-person co-working. So we're looking to expand that in different places in London and other cities around Europe and that kind of thing. So super excited to work on that.
I love it, man. If you're in London and some of these other cities, check it out. I went to a couple of days when I was there in London and I loved it. But look, let's jump into some of the challenges today. So this challenge is called, how do solo entrepreneurs not get lonely? I made the leap last year into starting my own online business. But something I was surprised by was how much I miss having teammates and colleagues. It can get lonely and sometimes, frankly, kind of boring working on my own goals. For solo entrepreneurs who want to stay solo, how do you handle this? Any tips or recommendations? From Supply Unica.
Okay. So that's a good question. The answer is a little dependent on the individual and their circumstances and where they live, but I'll try and share how I'd approach this. So if you live in a remote area, not everyone lives in a big city. Obviously your best bet is to join something online. So to be honest, even if you're just on Twitter, there's quite a vibrant public community of founders on there for different niches. So, you know, they're not too hard to find, but also joining an online community. So there are loads of great ones out there for different niches. there is a website called the Hive Index. So that's thehiveindex.com. And that is a directory of communities for every niche you can think of. So if you're an e-commerce founder, you can find those. If you're more of like a SaaS founder or something like that, it's easy to find that. Ramen Club is a great option for indie hackers and SaaS founders and bootstrappers and that kind of thing. But there are other good ones as well. There's like Indie Worldwide, there's Trends.vc, there's a bunch of good ones out there, right? So I would just have a look at what's out there and decide what's best for you. So that's definitely that. If you're in a big city though, that can also be a good option to do that. We've got lots of online members at Ramen Club who are in big cities too. But I'd also look for in-person meetups. Some people prefer in-person to online. Some people like both. Just decide what's best for you. If you're a bit more introverted, you may be less likely to want to go to an in-person meetup, but lots of people still do. So yeah, I would look at what meetups are out there. So obviously there's things like meetup.com, which has a real mixture. There's some bad meetups on there, but there's some really good ones as well. Sometimes you need to do a bit of trial and error. So I would see what's on there. If you're more in the kind of bootstrapper world, the Indie Hackers website has a bunch of local meetups. We have regular ones in London, for example, called Indie Beers. And I'd say that those are a couple of good ways. Something that you may not expect is like, one of the best ways to meet people is actually to start your own meetup and or start your own small community. More people are probably capable of this than they realize. And it's a bit of a hack if you're introverted and are scared of going to meetups. If you host the meetup, you always have an excuse to talk to everyone and to move on to someone else and that kind of thing. So in some ways it's easier for introverts to host meetups than attend them. So yeah, these are kind of three different approaches, and that's to meet people within your world as entrepreneurs. But obviously, maybe you have other hobbies as well, like to meet people. Maybe you want to join a local climbing club or running club or that kind of thing. So yeah, I look at these kind of various different approaches and think about what really appeals to you and works for you.
Yeah, I love all that advice. I'm not a solopreneur, so I have co-founders and I have a team now. So I don't necessarily have this same experience, but I did move from Australia and the UK, where most of my team is, over to Austin, where I got here and I was completely alone. And for like huge parts of my day, I just had no one, no family, no friends, no team to speak to. So at the beginning, I was like, holy shit, I feel very alone. And so I understand, at least to an element, of like going from having teammates and stuff like that. Like I felt like this big gap of what my days were like. And there's a lot of pros of like efficiency and productivity, but there is like a lot of cons of loneliness. And I felt like not bouncing ideas off each other and stuff like that. So that was a challenge for me. But I would say there is only one thing to do, like you mentioned, Charlie. It's like you just got to build a community. If you feel lonely and that's important to you, you actually just have to do the work to build a community. And a community just doesn't happen for you either. It is active work all the time. And I think Charlie's advice is very sound. Find online communities, get involved. Go to real meetups. I would also say try out co-working spaces. Some cities have good co-working spaces. Not every city. Some co-working spaces are super shit. And most co-working spaces have free memberships, like for a day or two. Go and just check a bunch out, because you might not even meet people in those spaces, but sometimes just being surrounded by others can give you that energy that you're kind of like craving, at least for a little bit. So try and see if you find a good one there. Now, I would say that's just one thing to do. Don't let that be your whole thing, because I still find it quite hard to meet great people at co-working spaces, but I do like that you get more involved. Like you'll see all the events. Like there is just a little hub to at least get you started, to get you out of your comfort zone. Then one thing I say probably on every episode is cold outreach. I love cold outreach. I cold outreach Charlie when I moved to London and built a friendship with him. I cold outreach people all the time. So just find people who are in your kind of area or look interesting, and just start messaging people. Most people won't respond, but some people will, and that allows you to just meet more and more and more people with similar interests and increase your odds that you're going to build a community there. Then you can start co-working with them as well. And then Charlie, you said the single biggest hack: throw your own parties or throw your own events. It's actually so easy. but like, I understand it could probably be pretty daunting, but throw your events. Like, throw events. It's the best. I love throwing events. I throw events all the time. And to be fair, I'm extroverted and I love meeting people. But it is a really easy way to do it. You can throw the event that works for you. You can throw like a more chill, relaxed party. You can throw big, outrageous parties. Like, throw the event and bring the people to you. And I never thought about that, Charlie, that like maybe throwing events is actually a good bit of a hack for introverted people, because you don't have to hold conversations and you have a reason to speak to people. So, you could be talking to Charlie, or you could be talking to me and be like, geez, Joel is not a vibe. But sorry, man, I've got to go. Charlie just got here. I've got to go chat to Charlie now. So it gives you that permission, and you can just duck out. I've got to just check some logistics on my phone and duck outside and have the breaks that you need, because it's everyone expects you to be busy. So yeah, I think there's some great advice there. I love all of that.
For sure. And sometimes people who are afraid of going to meetups, like, it's kind of the small interactions they sometimes struggle with. Like, they struggle to like go up to someone because they feel anxious, or know how to introduce themselves, or when the conversation's kind of tailing off, don't know how to like leave it. Like, but just hosting it just takes away all of that stuff. And also, people just come up to you. People just want to chat to you as well, for hosting it. So I would tell people to consider it, and it doesn't need to be even a entrepreneurial meetup, right? Like, you can start a local running club, or you could do all sorts of things. And I think it is a bit of a hack. I think a lot of people are crying out for kind of good in-person community events these days as well. I just don't believe there's quite as many as there used to be for some reason. And there's this famous book that I've read the summary of, but I need to read the rest of, but called Bowling Alone. And it's possibly from the 90s in America, but it just talks about how there used to be so many more kind of local community events and social clubs and stuff like that. And I think we just need to try and bring that back somehow. So yeah, definitely try that, people. Just on what you were saying on co-working spaces, I definitely agree. I would say, like, don't get disheartened if the first one you go to isn't right, because there's lots of crappy co-working spaces. I'd argue that for individuals, WeWork is crap, unless you just want like all you care about is a desk, it's fine. But if you want a community, it sucks, because chances are you're going to be sat next to an HSBC employee doing sales calls rather than like another founder or another freelancer. So what you want is like more niche, independent co-working spaces. It's what we're trying to do with Ramen Club in London, for example. So we have a space 2 days a week. We kind of lease space off a agency that has a lot of desk space, and everyone there's a founder, and they're part of the same online community, so you can stay in touch. And I think this is the future of co-working. It's more kind of interesting, niche, independent businesses and that kind of thing, rather than just the conglomerates. So, the last thing I wanted to say, Joel, is if anyone is worried about running a meetup or something and no one shows up, like, no one showed up to the first meetup I did, but I thought, why did no one show up? And I was like, okay, the link you sent out was broken. There weren't enough RSVPs, and the place sucks. And I changed it, and 20 people came the next time. So don't feel disheartened if it doesn't work the first time.
Yeah. Yeah, also just you can fill your lists pretty easily. If you just aim for 5 to 10 people, just do cold outreach. For my first event that I ran in Austin, I asked someone that I chatted with at Target, and I was like, hey, this person's pretty interesting, and they came along. So to begin with, just getting people there is really fun, and it'll be a good first point for you. I think with co-working spaces, you make a really good point too. Like, in Australia has a really interesting cafe scene where big chains almost exclusively don't work. There are like one or two, but like the vast majority of cafes in Australia are all independent. And anything that's not independent, like, is like kind of like lame and doesn't really survive in Australia. And I think that like the same kind of rule should happen for co-working spaces. Like, the more independent, the more personality, the more like character, the better people is there. So like, search for the independent, because they aren't, I guess, like corporatized. They're not just trying to save costs. That they actually are. It's about community over space a lot of the time. Well, look, I think we've given a lot of good advice here. So if I just wrap this up and I try and get really simple, the summary is, if you're feeling lonely in a startup, you have to build the community. That's really the only way around it. It can be a professional or a personal community. That's totally fine. You can either go to meetups, or you can throw your own meetups, or you can find people online, or you can go to co-working spaces. But the first one in all of these might not work. So just keep going, and cold outreach is your friend. All right, well, that's it. We'll close that one out. So, Supply Unica, you've been advised. That's it. We'll move on to the next challenge. This challenge is called Why Choose Bootstrapping Over Raising Venture Capital? Most people rather to raise capital over bootstrapping because founders can build a team and create credibility quickly without a product. Bootstrappers need to build their own product to create credibility. The great bootstrapping entrepreneurs are rarely in the spotlight, so it's hard to learn from them. So why would you take the bootstrap path? From Valderstron.
Yeah, interesting. I'm not sure I agree with one of their premises that the great bootstrap founders like aren't public about their work. If I understand, that's what they said, or aren't known publicly. There were lots of great, well-known bootstrap founders out there. There's so many. It doesn't mean every single one is public and well-known. That I know there are definitely people under the radar who are absolutely killing it. But there's definitely something to learn from lots of great public bootstrap founders, like Rob Walling, who owns Tiny Seed. So he shares a lot of great insights from his experience doing it. Pieter Levels, a very famous bootstrap founder. It's about 250,000 followers on Twitter or something. There's a bunch. So, if you search for the build in public hashtag, there's a bunch of founders just sharing their work publicly. And they're not all making tons of money yet, but some of them are doing really well. So I would say there is some there. But to answer the main point of the question, which is like, why would you be a bootstrap founder? Have I understood that right? Like they don't understand the point of being a bootstrap founder.
Yeah.
So I mean,
why select that over the VC path?
Yeah. Okay. So, God, there's a bunch of reasons, really. I mean, so if you look, the odds of a successful VC outcome. So if you want to make 100 mil, a billion, and like that, you need that to be successful, then that is probably the best path for you. There's also some projects which you kind of can't really build without VC money. So like if you want a more like hard tech startup or some software startups as well, it's just very difficult to bootstrap it because you need a huge amount of resources to get anywhere quickly, kind of thing. So there are definitely times where it makes more sense to be venture backs, or if you need a lot of maybe advice from a certain type of VC or something. But the advantages of bootstrapping, assuming that your project doesn't fall into one of those buckets of needing a ton of capital to get started, or you need it to grow really fast based on your personal goals, it gives you a lot more control. So with certain VCs, they take enough equity where they can take control of the company in certain circumstances if you dilute enough, not always, and could potentially remove you. They also say you have to grow, X amount, which obviously everyone wants to grow fast, but sometimes they set goals which are very, very difficult to achieve, basically. So the main thing for bootstrapping is control. So you have a more control over like your lifestyle, how fast you want to grow, what success looks like. Do you want to sell it, or do you want to keep doing it forever? Some people create a nice cash flowing business and just do that, and they work on automating it more rather than selling it. But if you do the VC path, your goal is basically to exit to as a public company, or to get a nice acquisition or something like that. So yeah, I think the main reason is you optimize a bit more for control rather than getting as big as possible. I run a community of bootstrap founders, and I don't like demonize the venture path at all. I've seen it work great for some people, but you just need to know the benefits of both, basically. And I think these days there are more businesses you can bootstrap than 10, 15 years ago. So you needed money literally to buy like the servers to create a software business in the past, which was pre-AWS. So there's lots of great, and like also accepting payments online was a pain. Now you have Stripe. You have all these tools now which didn't used to exist. So there are just a few more ways to do it now. And Yeah, I mean, if you check out the Rum FM podcast, it's our podcast. There's a few good examples of that as well. So I would dig a bit deeper for this person and see what else is out there.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I think the question is a valid question, but I do think some of the assumptions coming into this question are kind of flawed. The first thing is, I feel like I see more people building in public that are bootstrapped than anything else. Because it's almost like when you're bootstrapped, it's like this, almost like, you know, when you meet someone who is a vegan, you know they're a vegan. And I feel like when you meet someone who's bootstrapped, you know that they're bootstrapped as well. like they want to say that, like, especially on Twitter, like there's a loud community. And I love it, you know, it's cool to see, like, I'm obviously not a bootstrap founder. I'm very much a VC back founder, but I love that bootstrap path. Like, and I love seeing people build it and like show what that path looks like and how it's so different. So like, I definitely don't think there's a lack of information out there or a lack of people out there. You might just need to find the right people on Twitter, but I feel like there's a shitload of them. At least my Twitter somehow is covered in them. And I think like, and they're super honest and they share like really good tools and really good lessons. So absolutely, you know, search the building in public tag or hashtag on Twitter and you'll find a bunch. Then also, I guess like the idea that, you know, VC can just give you money at the idea stage without a product. And then that just gives you credibility is so flawed. Like, at least today, maybe that used to be true, but like you need to get like a lot of traction on your own in the VC path and a lot of credibility before you can raise, because VCs have an incredible amount of optionality. They don't need to choose you. You know, just because you have an idea doesn't mean that it's fundable. So I think it is, at the beginning, both paths kind of look very similar, is that you need to build something. So going from like 0 to 1 is really, you know, that's a similar path of getting started. So that's why I think, you know, following both sets of content is really interesting. Unless what I said is true for you as well. You know, it's a hardware company or it's like extremely like financially intensive, you know, like creating a brand new large language model or something. But if you're going to choose either path, it really just depends on what you want in your life, which is why people choose different ones. If you want to create, you know, a $1 billion company or a multi-billion-dollar company and impact hundreds of millions of people, whether it's consumer or B2B or enterprise or whatever it is, like the chances are is that to reach that kind of scale, you're going to need to have venture capital and to have that capital to invest in growth and to invest in product. That's not completely true. There are companies that have got their bootstrap. Like, I'm pretty sure MailChimp got their bootstrapped, like, which is wild. But most of the time, to achieve that kind of scale, you need massive teams and huge amounts of capital to invest in it to get there before you go profitable. But if you're happy with, you know, like a business that maybe doesn't achieve that, but you can still create massive bootstrap businesses. But if it's more about creating like a financial independence for you and just you, and that's like the kind of outcome, then I think bootstrapping is the path to go. But optionality and control is exactly the main reason you choose bootstrap. When you take venture capital once, you are on that path for the life of your business, and it is very hard or impossible to get off that path. So if you take in money, investors have pieces of control over your company where they can like, not always, but depending on the deals you take, you don't have the option to do anything you want after that. So it's a control thing and it's a scale thing. How big do you want this business to be? And how much control do you want? Like, do you want to be able to sell at any point, or do you want to be able to just like automate the business? But because once you're on that venture capital path, you need to be growing at least double year after year after year for a long time.
Yeah, definitely agree with that.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah, people just need to be
let's close this one out.
Getting into, I guess. Right? Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you there. Go on.
All right. Well, let's close this one out. Valdestron. You know, there are a bunch of good bootstrappers out there that you can follow, and there's a lot of good information to see what that's actually like. But the reason to choose bootstrapping over VC is because of the scale you want to achieve is different, and you want to have complete control over your business forever. So you don't want to have to double. If you want to change it, if you want to exit the business, you know, it's a whole lot easier. If you want to slow down the business, if you want to automate, if you want to step out, if you want to get someone else under control, you have the choice there, and you can choose the future a whole lot easier. When you go on the VC path, it's just one path, and that's it. And that's it, Valdestron. You've been advised. All right, so we've got time for one more quick question. We'll speed run this one. This one is called Stuck in a Cycle of Idea Generation. I'm a tech enthusiast who can whip up an MVP for almost any startup idea without needing to spend money on development really quickly. However, I'm currently at a standstill. I had a shot at a startup before creating an AI firewall app, but it turned out there wasn't a market need since existing simple firewalls were doing the job just fine. Now I'm struggling to find a new problem to solve. The common advice is to observe problems in your daily surroundings or through networking, but herein lies my hiccup. I'm quite an antisocial individual and have a strong aversion to networking. It's just not my cup of tea. This trait is proving to be an additional hurdle in my quest for startup ideas since networking often leads to understanding people's problems and spotting opportunities. I know the importance of identifying a real problem before diving into solution mode, but without the natural inclination towards networking, I'm finding it hard to discover problems that need solving. Do you have any advice or alternative methods to discover problems that require tech solutions, especially for someone who isn't keen on networking? From Tall Chicken 3145, which is one of my favorite names to date.
Okay, interesting. So I wouldn't say you have to be good at networking to find good business ideas. It sounds like you want to do a software business idea, so I assume it's SaaS, right? You don't necessarily have to be good at networking. What you need to be able to do is good at observation and also potentially user research. So you probably need to get comfortable talking to people in some capacity, but I'd say it would be more in a user interview context than, you don't need to go to meetups to get business ideas. I just don't think that's true. You might find it probably is good for inspiration, stuff like that. I'm not denying it, but it's not like a prerequisite to finding a good business idea. So to be honest with you, the easiest way to find a good business idea to work on is to actually just go into a competitive market as a bootstrap founder. I have seen so many examples of this in the last 5-10 years, like, especially when sometimes you get opportunities when a kind of legacy product, let's take Typeform, for example. So it's venture backed. They've just increased their prices year after year. It's become a bit of a bloated product organization. And but people are like, oh, there's no room for more, form builders. But a bootstrap company called Tally is now over like $30,000 MRR. And they just thought, okay, let's look at Typeform. What if we can make this cheaper and more accessible? They've got a really good free plan. The design is, in my opinion, it's a bit better than Typeform. It's not like revolutionary, but it's good enough, better considering the price. And they're just absolutely killing it. And there is just a bunch of examples of companies that have taken the same approach. There's always room to make something slightly better, slightly cheaper, better branded, launch in a different market. So I would say to look at stuff that's in the market that could be improved on, and you'd be surprised how many things there are. Another thing you can do is you can see what works in one market and launch it in another market. So an obvious example, you can do something in a different language for a different country if you're bilingual, but by a different market, you can mean a different platform as well. So one of our members at Ramen Club, they built a company called Data Fetcher, which basically it's an app that lets you run API requests from Airtable. And they discovered it because they saw something similar on Google Sheets. And basically, he said, if this works on Google Sheets and it makes good money, this would work on Airtable, because they saw there was nothing like that on Airtable. And it's pre-validated already, essentially. So they just worked out the specifics about how to make it work on Airtable, and they've just executed for 2 years and makes over $20,000 a month. One of our other members, for example, they saw that email lead list builders, which basically help you scrape emails to create lead lists, just had bad UX. So they made a better UX. Now it's called Find Email. It makes probably $30,000 a month. So you don't need, I would dispose of the idea. You need something that has not been done before. That's usually a bad sign if there's no competition. I would run into a market where A, things look competitive, but B, you could do something that's better, cheaper, or in a new market, and you'll find tons of ideas. Once you get into the details, you will need to get feedback from users because there are specific execution details to get it right. But yeah, I would dispose of the idea, you need to be good at networking to find these ideas.
Yeah. There's some great ideas there. I love that, I hadn't thought of a bunch of those ideas about thinking of a new business. For me, I'm not often trying to come up with a new business. I'm pretty invested in Vigo at this point. But I am constantly trying to think of where my business could go and if there are other areas for me to pivot into or other markets to capture or other problems I could solve in the same kind of domain. So I do spend a lot of time trying to think outside of the conventional path that we're on and trying to come up with new ideas of different areas that this could go. So what I'd say is the first thing is that you just have to make conscious time for this. In your calendar, have time by yourself or with someone else every single week where you're just talking through ideas. Like, how does this new technology apply? How could it apply? What's the news doing? Like, where you just have conversation with people where it is all about idea generation. And you're going to come up with tons and tons and tons of shitty ideas, but that's totally fine. You just want to get more and more out. So I think putting the time in is really important. The second is having someone that you trust. If say Tall Chicken, you're a solo founder, that doesn't mean you have to do everything alone. Find other solo founders, where you can work together and start sparking ideas together, because they might say something that's not interesting to them that's actually interesting to you. So spend more and more time with people that you like and think in an interesting way to you. Then I'd say, for me, the most important thing is exposing myself to new ideas and new problems and new businesses and new people. And that exposure can come in a number of different ways. One is the content I consume. Be very conscious, follow the right people on Twitter, watch the right YouTube videos, read the right books, read the right articles, but expose yourself to a bunch of new information all the time that is going to give you different perspectives and completely different, cultural perspectives or business perspectives, or I never thought about enterprise. I've only focused on B2C. Expand the kind of information that you're ingesting. And then if you're not good at networking, I wouldn't say you need to go to meetups, but I do think it's important to meet people. I think meeting people is really key. So you don't have to go to these meetups if they make you feel uncomfortable, but try and work out ways to meet people that is going to work for you. Because I do think having conversations can radically improve your exposure to stuff. Because when you're trying to search for content, even online, you're searching for information that's within the path that you already understand. When you meet new people that understand a whole different world, they're going to challenge you in ways that you would have never imagined. So maybe that's cold outreach. Maybe it's just going through your friends and getting introductions to their friends. Maybe it's going through co-working spaces, but I would try and spend some time with other people, because I think it's the fastest way. And weirdly enough, one thing I think is really beneficial for me is go on holidays, go to new countries, go on tours, just experience the world in different ways. I think that's really good for the creative side of things. I was just leaving a pause there in case I was saying that you wanted to respond. We can close this one out. So look, Tall Chicken, you've got these tech skills. That's mad. The fact that you can actually build something is exceptional. There's a lot of people out there that can't build, that have a lot of ideas that they want to build. So if you can meet the right people, I think that's good. But to get the ideas, first thing, look at ideas that are doing really well in crowded markets and seeing if you can do a more simple, cheaper version of something. Because that is a way that a lot of businesses are building now and actually disrupting the incumbents, because you can move faster and act in a cheaper way. The second is that see if there are ideas that you can apply to different markets. Is there something that you can apply to a different platform? Is there something you can apply to a different language? Is there something you can apply to a different country or a different industry? That's another good way, is that because you've got a pre-validated idea. The next is that just expose yourself to different experiences, different content, different people, different countries. Increase your surface area of experiences that you're having, because that will change the way you think about business and different problems. And lastly is that put the time in. Put time in to have conversations with people or by yourself to just come up with idea after idea after idea. If you just had 30 minutes in your calendar every day where you're coming up with ideas, eventually you'll come up with something that's pretty good. So just start there as at least a starting point. And that's it. Tall Chicken, you've been advised. And that is all the time we have for questions today. So let's move on to plugs. The absolute best part of the show, audience favorite, my favorite part of the show. Charlie, what's going on? What do you want to plug right now?
So first and foremost, I've got to plug Ramen Club, the community that I run. So we've got an online and in-person membership. In person is currently just London, but moving further afield. So yeah, just check it out. Check us out at ramenclub.so. If you're a bootstrap founder, you're looking to learn from other founders and join some fun events, yeah, come and check us out. Yeah, also shout out my friend's podcast, Indie Bites. It's a great 15 to 20 minute podcast with bootstrap founders. They got Rob Walling on the show soon. It's great. Yeah, you should check that out too.
Is that James?
Yes, it's James. James is.
Yeah, check out James McKibben's podcast and his Twitter. It's funny as, so would recommend that too. And I'm going to put all of Charlie's links into the show notes as well. So that'll all be there. So you can just copy and paste. So we'll follow those links. On my side, get out your phone right now. Hit like, hit subscribe. Be my next subscriber. Then also, new request, go to all of my videos and put comments on them. That would be fun for me. And then as always, I condone stealing. So steal someone's phone and like and subscribe on their phone as well. They'll love it. Comment from their phone too, as long as they're positive comments, and then give the phone back. And look, if you've got questions, write them in. We love workshopping this kind of stuff. So send them in and I'll workshop with a future guest. Send those through to podcast@joelditrapani.com. And lastly, if you want to have a conversation, I love meeting new people in this space. So I've got a booking link in my calendar. Book some time with me. You got a product challenge? You got a startup challenge? Let's talk about it. I'd love to kind of workshop it with you. And that's it. Let's wrap this one up. Charlie, man, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your advice. I really love this. This was a super fun conversation.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Joel. Great to have come on here. And yeah, hopefully chat again soon.
Awesome, mate. Well, this has been another episode of the Do As I Say, Not As I Did podcast. We'll see you all next week.